Hi kindergarten, welcome to the 5th 6 weeks. We are going to go over the curriculum that's coming up today, so please pay attention. First, we're going to start with our first unit. Our unit is Spring Celebrations. So, one of the things that we've talked about is placing events in chronological order, and that students should be able to place spring celebrations on a calendar. The celebrations that we're looking at for this piece is St. Patrick's Day, Passover, Easter, Mother's Day, etc. And it's important that they are able to describe which comes first, next, or last. In addition to that, when we're using these time words, one of these things I've gone ahead and given you pictures so that you could place those up. And I've also given you pictures right here. For example, in this one, they would look at these pictures and use time words to put these pictures in order. As you can tell, you first have to color the eggs. Then you would pick the eggs. Finally or last, you would open up your eggs and see what prizes you got. It'd be a great way to do this for Easter. On identifying similarities and differences, we want you to find similarities and differences in celebrations, for example, celebrations of faith such as Passover and Easter. So some of your sample assessment could be to identify at least 3 similarities between Easter and Passover, or differentiate at least 3 ways that St. Patrick's Day and Mother's Day are different. You also have a TEK here about comparing customs and traditions of spring celebrations. So I have given you a picture here of St. Patrick's Day. And you would show this to the students and ask them which holiday is being celebrated in this picture and what is the tradition on this day. For example, to wear green and watch parades. It's important when you're looking at this that you use those words identify and similarities and differences. Remember, one of the big things that we're doing this year is really making sure that we advance that vocabulary. On this, explaining the importance of them, we had a sample assessment idea that they could construct a collage of spring celebrations and explain how they are different from the fall and winter celebrations that they've talked about. And what we're hoping is that they are able to talk about what their families do on these spring celebrations. For example, my daughter's currently a kindergartner. She might talk that we go to TCU for the Easter egg hunt. That would be something that would be very appropriate. And of course, we compare those. So we want to make sure that they understand family customs, traditions, and then they compare with other people in the classroom. This would be a great way to talk about this. Under our unit documents, I have for you your unit overview, your vocabulary. Those vocabulary words will be important. Customs, celebration, I really want you to pay attention to that. And resources, I've given you 2 different pages from Nystrom in our new atlases, New Friends and New Places, either making a holiday timeline, they can create their own calendar, and there's another page here too, so make sure you look at that as well. Additionally, in the 5th 6 weeks, we talk about state community, so let's look at those standards. Our first standard talks about identifying the contributions of historical figures, and the 2 historical figures that we want you to talk about are Stephen F. Austin and Jose Antonio Navarro. They are in your standards. Stephen F. Austin was called the father of Texas because he brought families to Texas before Texas was a state. And for Jose Antonio Navarro, they need to know that he is one of the most influential Tejanos of his time, and he fought for independence for Mexico. So a sample assessment might be looking at these pictures and having them explain who they are and why they're important to Texas. A great idea would be to have your further advanced students go on ahead and write a sentence about each one of these men. As we identify contributions of patriots, what we want them to know is that good citizens vote to elect leaders and they make rules for the state of Texas. So it's really important that they know that part of good citizenship is voting in elections, and that when they elect those leaders, those people make the rules for us. Now on this one, we want them to look at a map of Texas and be able to locate Austin, the Gulf of Mexico, the Red River, the Rio Grande, the Trinity River, and the mountains. So what I've attached to you here is a Texas map. It is attached for you. It's a PDF, so you can open it up. You can look at it. You can print it off for the students. And I would have them all work together to place these things on this map. Here with identify how human characteristics of place are based upon geographic location. We want to talk about the fact that there are seasons in the climate of Texas. We talk about how it's springtime and how this might affect what we do. So we need to discuss that extreme weather conditions can be found in Texas. For example, tornadoes, thunderstorms, extreme temperature changes. All that can happen in the spring. And so they would want to talk about how we stay safe in bad weather. We have them in the state community identifying an important man with our state and community, and that is the governor. So they should be able to look at a picture and know that this man is Rick Perry. Also, they need to understand that it's important that they understand how authority figures make and enforce rules. And remember, that term authority figures is very important for you to get in. So the sample assessment is, who does this man work with to create rules and laws for Texas? And the answer would be the Congress. So they need to know that he alone does not make rules, but that he has another faction of people who are with him, and together those people make the rules. They need to be able to identify the flag. So if they saw this flag, they should know this is the flag for the state of Texas, and they should recite the Texas Pledge. And once again, use voting. Understand that voting is a method. They could participate in a class vote, but also they need to know how do we elect a governor? And the answer is that citizens vote for a governor. Now, we're going in more detail in this next unit with geography. So let's look at where we are here. We have to use those terms again: over, under, near, far, left, and right to describe location. So what we want to do is use position words to describe safety drills for bad weather. So for example, my sample assessment was a picture of this looks like a tornado drill, and you would say in a safety drill you need to be blank away from windows. The answer would be far away from windows, and you could give them several choices, but that they understand that. On locating places on a school campus, we want them to review the school map for fire drill and tornado drill exits. This is a great time of year to get this done, especially with the weather here in Texas, and we all know all we went through last year. This would be a perfect time to review this. Your principals will appreciate that. In addition to that, we want to talk about what tools you would use to aid in determining what to do in the middle of a drill. Now, those are big words, but please remember we're working on that. So tools that aid in determining where to go during a fire drill. And that answer would be your fire drill map. And if I were you, I would take the students to that, show them where it is. We also talk about spring weather in Texas is dominated by mild weather and rains. However, extreme weather does take place. And what we want them to know is what rules or shelter can we have in place to make sure we're safe during the weather. So here you see a picture of what's going on, and you can ask them to match several pictures. I've given you examples of one are people outside. You match the tornado to the tornado drill, the fire to the fire drill. And so it'd be a great idea for you to have the students kind of look at these different types of pictures and match together which ones go together. On this one, we talk about how spring weather in Texas is once again dominated by mild weather and rains, but we do have tornadoes. So let's talk about that. Because this TEAC talks about human characteristics, we want to talk about how we prepare for the weather here in Texas. How do we dress appropriately for spring? And what I wrote here was, it'd be great to talk about the difference between certain parts of the country. For example, in spring, because we're in Texas, we might dress in shorts, we might dress in short sleeve shirts. But that might be very different from spring in New York City or spring in Massachusetts or Wisconsin. They still may have snow on the ground. It's important for students to understand that depending on where they are, depends on how we react to that. Also, you can talk about the things that we do. You know, once it's springtime, we're outside, we're playing ball, we're doing all that stuff. That may be different depending on where you live. Our next TEAC talks about basic needs. So what we've put on here is what types of clothing help during spring weather. We have raincoats, umbrellas, and there's a picture I put up here. And you could have the students in this picture talk about what are the things that you would need here, and are these items food, clothing, or shelter, because they still need to be able to differentiate between that. Now on this one, we have which of these is a need in the springtime, and I have a picture of boots, and I have pictures of candy. We need to talk about the difference between needs and wants. Boots might be needs. candy, although it is yummy around Easter time, might be a want. And once again, in your unit documents, I have given you a suggested pacing guide. You have those for both of them. For example, on this one, I think it's really good to break this into human characteristics of spring as well as how to prepare for spring weather drills. And I have 5 days on each of those. And if you go to your resources, you'll see that for some of these teaks, we have Nystrom, New Friends, and New Places, so make sure you're looking through that. As always, if you have any questions, I am here to help. Please let me know any way that I can assist you, and I hope you have a terrific 5th 6 weeks. Thank you.